Well, welcome everyone, Hamilton Township. It's going to call this meeting to order at 12:59. Start with asking our council for declarations of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof. Seeing none, we'll note that. We have a number of delegations and presentations today. I'm going to start with Ruth Ferguson Althouse, RFA Planning Consultant with the Baltimore Development. How are you today?
Thank you.
Thank
Well. Yes, that's fine. Thank you. Yes. Hello, members of council and staff. My name is Ruth Ferguson Althouse. I'm president of RFA Planning Consultant, and I'm here on behalf of the owners of the Brother Property Developments property in Baltimore. And in the audience are Scott Kerr, who is an engineer as well as involved in the ownership, and Kevin and Steve Marshman. As well, Dave McDonald from McDonald Homes is here with them, and he is the proposed builder of the homes in the subdivision. So this land is located in the Baltimore settlement area, as shown on the slide as part of the submission package that I provided to the clerk. It fronts on Community Center Road at the north, and this would provide access for 19 lots in the proposed subdivision. As well, at the south on Hutzel Road, there would be access for 9 lots, and it would be separated by a natural feature that bisects the property. The total area of the lands is 17 hectares, or just under 42 acres. The purpose today is just to take you through some of the proposals for the property and the conversations and meetings we've had with both the county and the township staff. And we're hoping today to get some direction from the township council in going forward. We have inquired with township and county staff over the last 2 years about proceeding forward with the subdivision application through to the county of Northumberland. And we've requested this deputation in order to bring you up to date and in order to be able to have any questions asked by council and hopefully to receive some direction in how we should move forward. As shown on this slide, which is an extract from the official plan, the lands are shown in red and are within the Baltimore settlement area. And the outline of the proposed subdivision is shown in red, and just immediately on the left side of that are the adjoining lands that have been draft plan approved for a subdivision. Within the official plan policies, it states that the majority of new lot creation in a settlement area would occur by a plan of subdivision, and that is what is proposed. Also within the policies of the Baltimore settlement area is that there be a secondary plan prepared for a long-term servicing strategy. And over the past 10 years since the official plan for Hamilton Township has been approved, there has not been a secondary plan prepared, and it's our understanding that a secondary plan is not imminent. There are similar policies that apply to the area that is north of the 401, the settlement area there. In the meantime, other subdivisions have been proceeding without a secondary plan or even an official plan amendment to remove this requirement. And one of these would be the adjoining subdivision that's shown on the slide, as well as a recent subdivision in the last couple of years on Trotter's Lane, north of the 401. And we were told by staff that these subdivisions are not part of the water service area, and therefore they can proceed without any special official plan amendments. As mentioned, we have been meeting with the county and the township staff on numerous occasions over the past 2 years about the submission of a draft plan of subdivision for this property. Initially, we understood that municipal water might be available for this subdivision, and then were advised that it was not available. The developers have then proceeded to undertake a hydrogeological study with the test wells being installed on the property to evaluate how the site could proceed on the individual wells and septic systems. And if I could just move to the next slide, then we could just highlight in on the design of the subdivision itself. Thank you, yes, that one. This is the conceptual layout of the draft plan of subdivision, and the lots themselves have been laid out on the requirements for 1 acre lot size and 150-foot frontage. And this is in order to prepare for the township, or to satisfy the township zoning requirements, and in particularly whether there's municipal water supply or not, there is a requirement for private sewage disposal systems. So these would be the lot sizes that you would typically require for that type of servicing. So, which brings me to our reason for being here today, to summarize that the owners do wish to file an application for draft plan approval of a plan of subdivision to the County of Northumberland on the basis of this plan that's before you. And given that municipal water supply cannot be extended to this property, it's our position that we should not have to wait until a secondary plan is required or completed, nor should there be an official plan amendment required, similar to how Trotter's Lane and the adjoining subdivision lands were treated. We do understand that the municipality is looking at preparing a servicing strategy for future growth on expanding the municipal water supply in Baltimore or by a private water supply for individual subdivisions. And we do not, and that they do not support the subdivision moving forward until that's completed. However, we believe that the application should be able to move forward through the subdivision approval process with the county. And as you can appreciate, that process does take some time in order to prepare all of the studies and then to go through the technical review and public review process. So we would like to move forward with this while at the same time the township can continue to examine the municipal water supply options for Baltimore. As I've mentioned, the lot sizes and configuration, in our view, would not change significantly with this design whether there was municipal water supply provided or not, since the private sewage disposal will require that the lot sizes be larger. And if the municipal water supply for some reason does become available, then there is the option that these 28 homes could be provided for that hookup and then could contribute to the oversizing of the water. But if it is not possible to supply the municipal water supply, then the hydrogeological study would demonstrate that the individual wells will be adequate for the subdivision. So that's in essence what we're asking here today, is that we feel that we've been in a holding pattern the last couple of years and would really like to, they're committed to moving forward and meeting the requirements of the county and the municipality, and would like to get some direction from council. Thank you.
Thank you. Turn this over to members of council for questions. Anyone? None. Just a comment. It does appear that we're a bit of a roadblock to you at this particular moment. We'll proceed with would we get a staff report come forward about this? Would that be a good plan? Anyone else on council have an opinion? I was hoping maybe we could get some kind of a staff report come forward. It's not going to happen for May because our meeting is next week. So,
Right.
you know, I don't know if 5 weeks is enough time for us to come forward with something or not. Pat?
I'm with you. When you hear the story laid out, it's like, okay, it looks like we need to get this looked after one way or the other for you. So I think a staff report would be a good plan.
Okay. Yes, Mark?
At the same time, maybe we could get county staff report also as part of that, because county does overrule now, so good to have that.
So I'm on planning at the county level, so I could talk to Dwayne. Is that a good idea? And we'll get something from him as well.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it doesn't really appear like we are we're a big part of your problem at this particular moment. I can't promise that we can solve this by June, but we'll try to work on it.
I appreciate that effort, understanding that everybody's busy, and certainly I'll provide a copy of the submission that we've made today to the township, to Dwayne. We obviously work
county
very closely with Dwayne, and he's been trying to facilitate this as best he can, and has held many meetings with us and the municipalities. So, we will forward the same package of information to Dwayne Campbell.
And I'll have a conversation with him.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Appreciate
Everyone's finished? Okay, thank you.
that. Okay.
Our second delegation is our Hamilton Township Heritage Advisory Committee, and we have members John Joint and Tom Cruikshank who are going to come forward. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us. My name is John Joint. As the Mayor has said, I'm a member of the Hamilton Township Heritage Committee. Our purpose today is to tell you what we're doing in general, but more specifically to tell you about our major project, which is the inventorying of a significant number of old houses, buildings, barns, and so on in the township, and Tom will present that part of it. We view our mandate as to provide heritage information to the citizens of Hamilton Township and beyond. And I say beyond because we do get requests from beyond the township for information about properties that are in it. We also know that it's our obligation to advise council on heritage-related matters. Our committee is chaired by Barbara Taylor, who's here today. We have 7 members: Tom Cruikshank, Joanne Hurst, Les Houston, myself, Bruce Taylor, and Tracy Westington. Our council support member is Scott Jibb, and we have 2 advisory committees members, the Ewart, Timlin, and Gord Watt, who did live in the township but no longer do, so they do not have a voting right on the council, but we respect their information that they bring. This year, our budget is $9,500. The sources of that is $6,500 from council, $1,500 of which is for general purpose uses, and $5,000 is for the inventory project that Tom will talk to. And for, on behalf of the whole committee, thank you very much to council for your generous support. We really do appreciate it and couldn't continue with this project without it. The fundraising, we will raise $1,500 this year on our house tour. This will be the 3rd year we've had a house tour. Every year we have had some type of activity to involve the community. We've had a boat tour of old houses, old cottages along the lake. We've done barn tours. We've done a number of other things. But for the last 2 years, we've had a house tour, and we'll continue that this year. And we have 4 houses lined up that will be of significant interest, we believe. We've also had 1 donation this year of $1,500. We generally do get donations from time to time. And so that's the total sum of the $9,500. And the use of the funds is primarily for the inventory project that, as I say, Tom will talk to. But our activities, we have really 4 different kind of activities. We provide advice and approval of changes to historical buildings or structures. The latest one being the Massey House property down on Highway 2, which is a Pentecostal headquarters or a local office, I'm not quite sure. But that's been bought by a person who lives in the township. And he has come to us because he wanted to make some changes to the barn. Now, while we don't have the legal authority to prevent changes, we do respect the fact that people think it's important enough to get our approval that they come forward. And we have a number of those that occur from time to time. We get requests for information about people or properties in the township, and these are people who perhaps are doing a genealogy study of their family, or they have some connection to the area, and we provide that information to them. We're an advocacy group. We advocate for things that we think are important in the township. The Alberts Alley Bridge was one, the Sackville Bridge is another. We have a number of those projects underway that we want to make sure that are brought to everyone's attention when we think they should be addressed. The third thing is I've talked about advocacy. The other last thing is upkeep. There are 6 historical plaques located in the township, and we've just had a program underway to ensure that they are in good repair and can be read and so on and so forth. We also provide signage when it's required. We have at the railroad track where it crosses the lake, There's a sign that's been put up by us to talk about what happened, and also in Gore's Landing, we have one at the dock area. So that's a very brief snapshot of what we do, the finances that we have, and the kind of activities we participate in. So I would welcome any questions anyone has regarding us.
Thank you. Council, any questions or comments? Yes, Pat?
I don't have a question, I have a comment, though. I just wanted to say I've always been incredibly impressed with the things that your committee has achieved. So you completely have my support. I'm glad to hear that people from the community, like you were saying with the Massey House, do come to you to
Yes.
get advice, because that just helps keep things the way I guess it should be. And it's harder now when there's not the legal obligation to
That is
to
correct.
put things in. So I'm glad to hear that people want to keep that historical significance.
We feel the same way, that they come to us even though they don't have to. And we can give them our input, and hopefully it adds to what they're doing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So you're turning this,
I would just like to add, John did a super job, but I think I'd like everyone to know that the Learning Connection featured Mina Benson and Karen Wells presented. And I think it was really good for the township. And now we hope to get a little more recognition in Mina Benson's place. Tom wrote a wonderful piece about her in Watershed, how she mapped Labrador, and that was used as mapping until there was lots of airplanes who could actually check it out, and people still use it. And she was born in Bugle, can you imagine? She went to Labrador after her husband was killed somehow or died. She just wasn't very able. She was able, and she mapped a huge section of Labrador, which is still being referred to. So I think I'm really happy that it's gotten more attention. We did put a plaque up a long time ago. And one other thing, we will sometimes be able to get plaques for people's houses. Those who want to show off they've got this great old house and they're maintaining it can get a little plaque. So thank you for your indulgence.
that's quite all right. Thanks for the info.
I guess we'll turn it over to me.
Yeah, I was going to do that, but I got,
Okay.
yeah, you're up.
I wanted to add my personal thanks to all of you on council for the support of the inventory project. All of us on the Heritage Committee are pleased that architectural heritage has been recognized as a cultural asset to the community, and we think these old buildings are important to the township and something valuable for years to come. And the more people that agree with us, the better. Now, in the years past, there have been sporadic efforts to catalog local histories, but this is the first time we've gone out in the field to survey the entire township. I'm going from door to door, taking pictures of every old house and barn and church that I see. I'm interviewing people about their homes and tracking down old photos that document how houses may have changed over the years. And I've taken this show on the road, and I presented it, a similar presentation to what you're seeing today, to the several heritage groups. Went to a seniors group at Empire Crossing, the ACO, the Earl Ashby's Heritage Agricultural Society, whose name I've forgotten now, but there is a lot of interest in this, and when I knock on people's doors, I sometimes think they're going to slam it in my face, but the reaction I'm getting from people is way more helpful than I thought it would ever be, and I'm quite delighted that it seems to be people are enthused about this, and they've got time to discuss things with me. And meanwhile, the people in the Northumberland Archives know me well now, because I'm there every week or so, combing through old land registry abstracts, tracing the ownership of buildings back to day one. And currently we have about 600 files open. Now, the point of today's talk is to introduce to you some of the things we've uncovered in our survey. And right now, let me give you some of our observations. This is sort of the entertainment part of the program. If there's only one lesson you ever learn about heritage architecture in Hamilton, it's that we have our own special kind of heritage farmhouse. And it's a variation on the old farmhouse theme, and we started to call them Camborne cottages because that's where they're concentrated. And for us architecture buffs, we know that they're sort of a Regency style, but they have their own details that set them apart from the ordinary. And I always like to say, just like Cape Cod has its Cape Cod houses, And just like Kingston has all its limestone houses, Hamilton Township has Camborne cottages. And one of the nicest is the old Lacey Farm just outside Camborne, as seen in a 19th century photograph. Here's the same house today with the veranda gone, but still pretty in its own right. All the Camborne cottages share a distinctive look that is characterized by hip roofs, and that means that the roofs are sloped on 4 sides, and they're exaggerated to unusual proportions. In fact, the eaves are wider than you usually see, and as if there were some kind of built-in awning taking the place of complementing a veranda. And this is the Kennedy farmhouse at Camborne, from which Kennedy Road takes its name. Here's another example, the very familiar Westington House on County Road 9. This is the only Camborne cottage for which we have a definite date. 1857 is carved into the stone, so that gives us an idea of when these houses were built. And what's also interesting is that some of the Camborne cottages are built into a hill, so that the basement opens at grade, and the front door, in fact, is on the upper story. Now, the grade doesn't quite show on the Damon house, but the second story at the back is at grade. So the front door is on the second floor. Now, not all of these houses follow the pattern exactly, but the fun lies in comparing and contrasting them. This is one that no longer stands, but we have a record of it from the old atlas in 1878. So in all, we have recorded 9 of these buildings. 2 have been demolished, 5 are still standing, and there are another 2 that started out as Camborne cottages, but have a second story added. So that's the homework part. You got to remember this about the Camborne cottages. So as important as it is to document our history, it's also a bit dry if all I do is talk about Victorian architecture. And as I dug into the research phase of the project, some really interesting tidbits start to emerge in newspaper accounts, in wills, and other documentation. Now, they're personal stories, some are tragic, some are even a bit of a scandal. So let's get to the juicy stuff. The one you might be familiar with, that you already know, is that Hamilton Township was the first stop for Susanna Moody and her husband, John Dunbar Moody. They were genteel, middle-class immigrants, eager for pioneer adventure in 1833, and they settled on a barely cleared farm on what is now McClellan Road. Her most famous books, which were part memoir and part advice for would-be settlers, were based on her experiences here. But the truth is that the Moody's were simply too genteel for pioneer life. They left Hamilton in 1834, full of complaints, after only 1 year, and grumbled about privations all the way. But it's interesting to note that the next settler on their land was actually quite successful and built this very substantial home, which is in fact one of the better early houses in the township. And here's one with a whiff of juicy scandal. Hamilton's heritage covers not only farm history, but some early cottages as well, because Rice Lake was one of the first Ontario inland lakes to be colonized by cottagers. And some of these cottages were Americans, like the Clegg family from Cincinnati, Ohio, which has spent their summers on Black Island just off Gore's Landing since the 1920s. What's even more interesting is the early history of the cottage, which goes back to 1894, when the island was purchased by a New Yorker named Hobart Bosworth and his wife Lulu. With names like that, couldn't help but Google them. So it turns out Hobart was a movie star of the silent era, with dozens of pictures to his credit, right up to the talkie era. He was also an asthmatic, and he bought the island as a retreat for his health. And he built part of the cottage, which still shows today, the pointy part in the middle of the building on the island. He was also a bit of a womanizer, and when Lulu found out, she promptly divorced him, and she won Black Island in the settlement. So how Hobart knew about Rice Lake is anyone's guess, but he might have had connections to the Coburg Summer Colony, which you probably know was a clutch of fabulously wealthy Americans from the Pittsburgh steel industry who adopted Coburg as their summer home. Some of the most lavish houses ever built in Ontario were part of this American invasion, and some of the colony spilled into Hamilton Township. One of the largest of them all was a country house on Ontario Street, just north of Coburg. It was called Dungannon, and it had its own staff, its own stables, tennis court, gardens, state-of-the-art barns, and a shady picnic ground. And central to the estate was a sprawling 35-room mansion. It was built in 1905 by George T. Oliver, who made a fortune supplying iron to the Carnegie Steel Mills of Pittsburgh, and he became a U.S. Senator and advisor to Presidents Taft and Woodrow Wilson. The family took a major hit in the Depression and ultimately sold Dungannon. In 1946, the place burned to the ground. And this was captured, and we have these photos, which is really excellent historical material to have. Now, there's a sad romantic tale about this house, which you might know as Dr. Dano's house just outside Baltimore. It was built by a Toronto industrialist named Charles Powell, whose wealth was several notches below the Pittsburgh steel barons, but certainly he was a man of means. He built this house for his wife, Agnes, and it's the only example of Queen Anne architecture in the township. And that's a style defined by playful turrets and other oversized features, which are in abundance here. It was under construction in 1895 when Agnes, she was only 41 years old, she was stricken by a liver disease and died suddenly. The tale is sad indeed, but takes a strange twist when you read Agnes's obituary. It refers to her as a girl bride, which prompted me to do the math and learn that she was only 13 when Powell married her. Here's another of Hamilton's humble farmhouses. It's a simple structure built in the 1860s. It was the Cruikshank homestead, no relation to me, and it still stands on a rise beside Burnham Street in Plainville. And this is where William and Abigail Cruikshank raised 10 kids, including a son named John, who gave up farming to study law, and he practiced in Coburg. In 1895, he was working for the buyer in a real estate deal that went terribly wrong. The seller, a man named John Phillips, refused to give up the deed, even though the buyer had paid him in full. When John Cruikshank pressed him to pay up, Phillips grew more and more angry. Ultimately, he marched into Cruikshank's office and shot him point blank. He died of his injuries in what is one of the few and most scandalous murders in Coburg's history. Another tragic tale, but with a happier ending. It appears that Captain William Handley, who built this beautiful Regency cottage about 1837, was declared insane. In fact, his wife had to petition the Upper Canadian government to enact new legislation so that she could take him out of the province to New York for treatment. The second generation also had a story to tell, in that Handley's son became, of all things, personal valet to the Pope and a celebrated sculptor in Rome. Handley's grandson won an Olympic gold in water polo at the 1904 Games in St. Louis. I can't make this stuff up. By then, the family connection to the house was probably forgotten. It stood on the site of the new Canadian Tire store in Coburg and was for a time a restaurant until the suburbs caught up to it, and it was rescued and rebuilt on a new location by none other than John Joint, who is on our committee. Now, there are more stories I could tell, and nothing would be more fun for me than to take you on a driving tour, but I suspect you have other more pressing matters to attend to today. For now, the Heritage Committee just wanted you to get a taste of what we're doing and know that your support has been much appreciated.
Thank you very much.
Any questions or comments?
Well, that's one of our more exciting committee of the whole presentations that I can remember, and I thank you very much for that. Fellow council members, Pat.
Thank you so much. That was definitely appreciated. How is this going to eventually be made available?
We're debating how best to put it into the public realm. It could be a book, could be a website, and we're going to have to figure out the logistics and financials of all that stuff.
However it ends up, I want to see it start to finish. I had a really good time today. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Any other comments or questions?
Sorry.
I never get to realize how wonderful we do have in this township, a history and a heritage. I've spoken to Les about this a couple of times, about the fact that we don't have a museum. And I know that Coburg is going to be enacting that with the new Golden Plow structure. But, should we be looking at stuff like this in the future? Creating a museum or such to capture the heritage in one location. I know that there's archives here, I believe, in the basement or wherever it is. But it just seems that to keep this stuff hidden from view would be kind of a sin to, in my point. So I think we should maybe look in the future to maybe create a museum someplace. I mean, we've got so many features to celebrate, you know? So that's my only comment.
Let's talk.
You start with a donation, or?
Well, you know, it's a funny thing. If you have something like this, the money will raise, you know, it will come in. So thank you.
Just comment that in terms of how we want to package this, the objective is that we attract people from outside the community. We think of all the thousands of people who live in 200-square-foot condos in Toronto who would love a place to go on the weekend. And so with the information we have, we want to package it in a way that we could do a driving tour, a bike tour, we would perhaps have guided tours on some sort of schedule. So that's the objective, is to have it accessible and use it as a draw. But what you've just suggested would add to that. Because there are some art galleries around you could have, and there's great theater around here. And if you get the local museums, which I know there's to have. So we think we can build on that to do what this is. That's what's our objective.
Well, Barbara, you gonna give us another comment?
I can't resist it. The Town volunteers tomorrow night are putting on an evening about Suzanne Moody. Leah McLaren, who's now become Leah Ross, she's written a book called The Hidden Diaries of Suzanne Moody, and it details all the horrible things that the Harrises inflicted on the movies and how they live in their pig shed.
Not that Harris.
Michael Peterman from Trent University, who's done the history, and he actually led one of our tours. We've had about 15 or 20 tours, but he led a bus tour all about these places. He is going to argue with it's Cecily McLaren, or Cecily Ross, about whether her book has any basis in fact or not, because he's done the research. But her book is really good, and we've even got a moderator so they don't come to this. So tomorrow night at Victoria Hall, it's only $25. It starts at 7 o'clock.
Free advertising.
It'll be well worth your time, and there's refreshments afterwards. Thank you, thank you.
I think I want to go on record, just let my fellow council members and staff know that what you see here today is nothing special. It's what happens every heritage meeting. And it's a wonderful group, and I've nailed the committee for the next 3.5 years, so you're out of luck.
Well, once again, thank you very much. I think before I lose total control of this meeting, I'm going to ask our third group to get ready. Our third presentation today is dealing with the West Northumberland Physician Recruitment Retention Committee. So you have Mayor Henderson and Clerk Brett Larmer here. Welcome to Hamilton Township. That was not a typical presentation for us. The floor is yours, John.
Thank you. Is this on? It is. Thank you.
I think it is.
Certainly, thank you for having us here today. Hopefully joining us, he's perhaps a bit delayed, is Gerald Blackstock. Gerald Blackstock currently is the chair of what we call the current West Northumberland Physician Recruitment Committee. And we've asked him to be here because Gerald was the past chair when Tracy West was the consultant. And to this moment, he still remains the ongoing chair of the committee. And we felt in that manner, if you had any questions specifically to the operational side, they certainly can be addressed to Mr. Blackstock or Gerald. In that manner, only because at this time, my representative currently sitting on that committee is Deputy Mayor Suzanne Seguin, and she represents the interest of the town of Cobourg. Let me give you a brief summary, if I can. Initially, we have been operating for approximately 12 or 13 years as a committee. representing as a committee trying to find physicians for Northumberland County, in particular for the 5 municipalities that have always been part of this committee for the past 12 years. Just seems not that long ago, Miss Tracy West indicated as our consultant that she would like to end her tenure after numerous years, and based on that, we thought it would be a good time to reflect on the policies that governed that committee. Based on that, I took that to a member of the committee, which is Miss Laurel, and as well as Linda Davis. As we were working through that, we came to the discovery when we received legal opinion, and we did receive a legal opinion both from Town of Coburg and from Linda Davis, that the committee should not have been operating legally. In other words, we shouldn't have been doing consulting agreements. We shouldn't have been paying Miss West. We shouldn't have been making decisions. We shouldn't have been making motions. But this was running smoothly, I can tell you, from what I've heard, the last 12 or 13 years, of which the last 4 I was a member, being the deputy mayor of the town of Coburg. Recognizing this challenge, we then sat down with lawyers and indicated, what would we have to do to reframe the committee, keep it as close as possible to what we've been doing, and yet understanding we would need changes. Based on that, the first change was to move it from a committee to a board. They indicated that the governance had to be owned by a municipality at the time, and they highly indicated because perhaps of gray areas, it should or shall not be Northumberland Hills Hospital. Based on that, the town of Coburg stepped up and indicated we would take the lead, working with legal counsel to reframe agreement with all our municipalities. Within that agreement, of which you received, I think there's approximately 18 or 19 proposed pages, we indicated the major change would happen in governance. So I'll use Crammy as an example. We indicated that when a member was no longer representative of the municipality, that person to be reappointed would go and belong to that council. So for example, Crammy did not have a representative, so they went through their proper process to their municipality. A person applied, the council would pick that person. That individual citizen would represent their interest. Even though it's still called a committee now, when this is finally approved, it would be known as a board. Therefore, their interests are protected. They would work with Gerald Blackstock, who's the chair, whoever the committee wishes to appoint. They would follow their own procedures in-house in which to work through the consultant, and I'll get to the consultant in a moment, in an effort to help go out to engage future doctors to come again to one of the 5 municipalities. We've had great success because over the 13 years, I think we have certainly encouraged 10 doctors to settle in our area, which we all benefit from. The concern we're having moving forward, according to the records, if indeed they appear to be accurate, because remember, doctors only tell us perhaps in the very last year that they truly are going to retire. The expectation is we'll require 8 doctors in our 5 municipalities within the next 4 years. So that's why we believe it's critical to maintain this committee, to function, to bring doctors forward. You might ask through this, what is the incentive? The only incentive we offer, we offer up to a $10,000 allocation if need be, if someone is moving considerable distance to the board. That's the only funding we allow to attract a doctor. You might then ask the question, why over these 12 years, why have 10 doctors come to our region? My answer would be for you the quality of life that we offer in Northumberland, whether that be Hamilton, Crammy, Alma-Calderman, Port Hope or Coburg. I truly believe it's the quality of life we can offer. In moving forward, we indicated that in past, all the funding of this committee was supported by all 5 municipalities, and in the last recent many years, it was always based on population and a percentage. So if I can use us as an example, Coburg's percentage, because we have the largest population, was based at 31.9%. So that meant for us that our council moved a motion to provide $17,100 each year towards physician recruitment. In your case, being Hamilton Township, it's 18.4%, which comes out to our records anyway, $9,843.34. And working through this challenge, we indicated that we would keep the figure the same for 2019 moving forward. What we attempted to do as a committee is to maintain the same financial figure over a 5-year period. And let me explain why it's 5 years. We want to ensure that no committee, this committee was coming back to any council for any additional funding unless there were extreme measures over 4 years. Why 4 years? Because it's a term of council. We actually stretched it to a 5th year because we knew that's the election year, and you may have new members on your council. We felt it wasn't fair with a new council coming on board to hit them with about physician recruitment committee and finances. So I can say during my tenure, the financial contribution remained the same for the entire term and continues to be at the same term. Now, moving forward, the recommendation, and again, I'll use 2 examples of Coburg and Hamilton. Moving forward for 2020 through to 2021 was the recommendation, and again, this recommendation can be changed by the committee themselves under Gerald Blackstock. I mean, it's their call, right? But the way it's promoted, it would say for 2020 and 2021, because by then our population has changed over time to 32.2%, because we are growing in Coburg, we would now have to pay $12,298.44, and therefore my recommendation through Suzanne Seguin, Deputy Mayor, is that we would forfeit $19,100. For Hamilton Township, it says here, and I will check the records to make sure they're accurate, but it says that your population's actually gone down slightly. The percent's dropped to 18.1 from 18.4. But because costs are going up as well, your allocation would go to $10,847.87. So if you're asking what's the difference, it's just slightly over $1,000 difference. But please remember, that's for the whole entire, we're hoping for the next whole 4, if not 5 years. The whole attitude of previous committees was not to go back to the municipalities and ask for more money. In other words, to be self-sufficient. That takes me to then who represents the committee. Well, we did a hiring between Linda Davis, Laurel Savoy, and myself. Initially, we had someone ready to go. Because of the delay, we had 3 wonderful applications and 3 wonderful candidates. Over this part of this year, because of the time extension, we lost all 3 candidates. The committee went back and put a hiring committee together once again through a very formal process, 2 sets of hiring. And at the end of the result, I can tell you they would now like to hire an individual by the name of Maria Gomez. So Maria Gomez is this month will be offered a consultant agreement. Unfortunately, the committee cannot offer that agreement because they have no standing. Therefore, the town of Coburg is going to offer Maria Gomez an interim contractual agreement as a consultant to start to work on behalf of physician recruitment. Right now, the only money we can guarantee is ours because Cobourg Council did pass the agreement. Crammy Township did pass the agreement. And we have, according to Mr. Blackstock, some money left over in reserve, so we can put that towards. And at this time, that's the position we're in. We can only maintain Maria Gomez at this time based on the resources at hand. We're hoping to offer and have this contract ready for Mr. Blackstock to offer, but we really have to offer it on his behalf because, again, the committee has no legal standing. So you might say, ballpark, what are we paying Maria Gomez? I may have the figure off a bit, but approximately $34,000 for the year. And then we include any disbursements that she may require, such as travel, meeting with doctors. There's no office, of course. She works at home. But that basically is the extent of what we pay this particular person. So in summary for me, if I go back to Cobourg, and I'll use Cobourg as the example because it's the one I know the best. Currently in Cobourg, all our signs are wrong. In fact, our population is 19,440. All our signs are wrong. But with that being said, if you even take the increase going into 2020 and 2021, that means we're not even paying $1 per person for us to get physician recruitment. And that doesn't mean we're getting physician recruitment directly. It may go to Port Hope, it may go to Crammy, it may go to Alma Calderman, it may go to Hamilton. We really don't care. We just care that it comes to Northumberland because we truly believe we all benefit. There are, of course, you will know there are people on the waiting list in all our areas. I'll be on that waiting list soon because I believe my particular doctor will retire in the next 2 years. So I believe I will be without a doctor in 2 years from today. And I'd very much like to have a physician that I could go to in Northumberland. So at this point, what would happen as we redefine the committee, we do have to change the name of the committee, and it would be known legally, according to the agreement we presented to you. It's a long name, I apologize. It would be called the Joint, and the reason for Joint, because we're partnering. West, because we are West Northumberland. So it's the Joint West Northumberland Physician Recruitment and Retention Service Board. The key difference is moving from a committee to a board. It then gives us legal status. So if I can use the example, right now we've asked your representative to be grandfathered. There's no change for your representation on the board. But if that person at some time decided, okay, I've done my due diligence, I'd like to leave the board, then you as a council would have the right to do an advertising, pick the citizen that you think would best represent your interests, along with your council member. They would go to this board and represent your interest. The other big change by working together, we decided that we would appoint, through our clerk, Brent Larmer, a staff member from Cobourg. And the reason for that, because then we knew the protocols would be followed appropriately, the running of the meetings would be documented appropriately. That wouldn't fall to the consultant, because in past, that's what Tracy West had to do. She only had to be the consultant. She had to go home, type all the meetings, all the notes, and get it out and run it all off. But we felt by doing it with a staff member, then it would go to Civic Web. It would be put out on all municipalities, Civic Web, one and the same. So if the public was asking, where's this information? What are you doing? What are you up to? How are you spending our money? We'd be able to tell them. And I can tell you in past, that did not exist. They would also have the right, based on meetings, to attend those meetings. As people attend your meetings today, they would have the right to sit in through the chair. would need permission of the chair to speak to the board. But again, it was very much like how most of I believe our committees operate. What it would do, it would bring the West Northumberland Physician Recruitment Board up to the level of what I believe all good committees should be doing. The information would be shared equally across the board. That for me, and I apologize if I left anything critically out, it may come to me in a moment, but that would give you a brief summary of where we are. I guess lastly, as Mayor Town of Coburg, and having served 4 years on this committee, I feel it's critical that as a group, and again I want to state, it won't be me, it will be Deputy Mayor Seguin representing our interests. But I feel, and we do have a grandfathered representative in Linda Nichols, who's agreed to remain in that capacity representing the citizens of the town of Coburg. I believe the committee future board does an amazing job. I believe they do a great job in hopefully attracting, I'm hoping, those 8 new doctors for our region. In fact, it's telling us that new doctors don't take the same caseload as old doctors. So what we're finding now, we need 1 1/4 doctors for every past doctor such as mine. So if you do the math, we might need 10 or 11 in the next 4 years. On that board, as you can see from the agreement, we have representation from the doctors themselves. Right now, Dr. Fraser Cameron is the physician recruitment. Linda Davis, the CEO from the hospital, sits on that board. And we have others who may sit on the board, as you can see from the agreement, who add or bring a breadth of knowledge to the committee future board, because it's critical good decisions are made. So you can see that I'm very passionate about this committee or board going forward. I personally learned a long time ago, if I looked at other municipalities who go alone in trying to get this for the community, the prices I've seen aren't anything under $75,000. In other words, if I did this alone for the town of Coburg and only the town of Coburg, bottom line is going to cost the public at minimum $75,000. Time I hire, equipment, material, insurance, start going through the list. And yet collectively together, let's be honest, I in 2020 and 2021, I'll be paying $19,100. Again, doesn't even match $1 for my population. So for me, collectively, sometimes they say to us, there's strength in numbers. I think this is a perfect example where there's strength in us being together. So I'm open to any questions. I brought Mr. Larmer because Mr. Larmer is our town clerk. He's the guru of all things legal and all things by law and protocol. And I'd be open to answering any questions you might have.
Thanks, John. Anyone? Yes, go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, it was brought up at one of the meetings we had previous about the coverage of liability for the members at large and also the council members.
Okay, twofold. Right now, you're quite right. If I can go back to what we have, you own all the liability. There is no coverage. Your council member is protected because of council, because of being elected, but your citizen member is not protected at this time. So if they were doing any action or in a car or something were to happen, my answer is that's not a good news story. However, in conferring with the lawyers, we indicated if we went to a board and signed an agreement where there was shared ownership and we became a board as per the agreement before you, then the board member and the citizen is then fully protected. And because the town of Coburg chose to take the lead on this, because remember I indicated from the lawyers, they said you need a lead municipality. So Coburg chose to be that lead. So we had to, with our lawyers, look at risk management. How many risks have we had over the last 13 years? And I can tell you they've been minimal at best, not less than 1%. So based on that, we agreed as Town of Coburg that we would own any additional rests, not just for our citizen, for yours and everybody else's. So you say, well, who owns the ownership? Well, Town of Coburg. And we're betting based on past 12 years of history, our premise is we really aren't going to have any. So that's why we were willing to step up. But although I'm saying Town of Coburg is willing to take the lead, I want to be very careful here in the wording, that in the agreement, we can't do anything in the agreement unless all the parties agree. In other words, Alnwick, Haldeman, Coburg, Crammy, Hamilton, Port Hope have to agree precisely to the language each and every time for it to be a unified. So as much as we're taking the lead in terms of the extra insurance, the extra risk management, we're appointing a staff member at our costs, we're doing the finances at our costs. They're not coming to you at all. They're not in the contract at all. We just decided we really need this to happen. Excuse my French, but we're going to eat the difference to make this go forward. What we're asking for at this time is, would you, at least on paper, the way it's been presented to us, and this was presented by the committee, would you at least honor, for now, what's been proposed in the agreement? So this year, again, I'll go back, your share would be $9,843.34. I've even asked Mr. Blackstock, Gerald, to look at what they might have in reserves, what the committee has accumulated over 12 years. Is there any way, I asked him this question, is there any way keeping that fee the same for the next few years moving forward? So you would face no increase, it would simply be $9,843.34. He indicated he will look at that with the committee. And he's doing that as we speak. I think we met him, last Wednesday of last week.
Yeah, I know we're meeting tonight. So I saw one of the documents that said to get an approval by June 1st. Is that correct, from all of the partners?
Well, we're struggling a bit, and I'll admit we're struggling. Mr. Blackstock came to us and said, finally, after another round of advertising, we have a person we'd like to offer based on that person's expertise and background, because she was a past consultant for physician recruitment from another area. They would like to start to work towards a consulting agreement to get this person working. Let's be honest, the only funds we have presently are the $17,100 put up by Town of Coburg, the $5,000 put up by Crammy, and of course whatever they have in reserve. But if you add that up, you can see that's not going to fully address this person's full year salary. So we need to know, good, bad, or indifferent, where does Hamilton Township lie? We need to know eventually, because if you're part of this, fantastic. If you're not, we fully understand. But I'm going to make it clear, Town of Coburg's going ahead one way or the other. So we either, and I'll be honest with you, our whole council is hoping all the partners will stay, because remember I said there's strength in that partnership. But if you tell me close to next year's budget deliberations you're not, that's okay. Then we'll excuse you. You won't have any representation. You won't have anybody in the board. And we'll move forward. Because we can't afford, we believe in the Town of Coburg, we can't afford to be short 8 to 10 physicians. And they're not just in Coburg, believe me, they're just not in Port Hope. They're spread throughout the region. As we have an aging demographic, and we do have an aging demographic, certainly in Coburg, we can't afford not to have physicians consider Northumberland as an option.
I understand totally, and I think I'll pass it to Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, sir, because we have another series of meetings coming up. I want to thank you for your presentation. I also served on the committee, as you well know,
Yes,
John.
you did.
I fully support what you've said about the value of the committee. I've tried really hard to get this. We have a council meeting next week, and it's not on the agenda right now, but
That's fine.
I'm trying very hard to get it on there. I'd like to see us get it on there if we could. I think you're going to find that you're going to get support from this group, and we'll try and get this pushed through as quickly as we can.
Okay, and if I could just end by saying, there's two parts, and once we formulate the agreement, that lies with each municipality, right? We each have same ownership, but once we solidify that, and then the committee, which becomes the board, becomes legal, then I can give them the consulting agreement, which that board can govern and direct. Correct.
Thank you again.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, John.
So I need a motion for adjournment from Committee of the Whole. Thank you, Pat. Seconded by Larry. Thank you. All in favor? Carried.